Well, there you go. We're live. It's that time again, folks. It's Sunday. It's 6 o'clock. And it's time for DHTV. Yay! DHTV. Yes, it's DHTV time, and we're talking accessible homes. And of course, we've got the wonderful Zec with us. Hello, Zec.
Good evening. Yes, I'm speaking to you from my wonderfully accessible house.
And we are joined by the wonderful Kerry Thompson. Hello, Kerry. Tell us a bit about yourself, Kerry.
Hello. Thanks for having me. A little bit about me. So my name's Kerry, obviously. I have a rare form of muscular dystrophy. I'm a full-time power wheelchair user. Mind yourself, I will take your feet out at some point. And I do live in an accessible bungalow.
You live in Milton Keynes, don't you?
I do. I live in the land of the roundabouts in concrete cows.
I've got a massive soft spot for Milton Keynes. So I grew up in Luton, and when Milton Keynes was being built, which shows just how old I am, we used to drive up to Milton Keynes and watch it be built, because it used to have in the middle of the shopping centre a club called The Point, with a 10-screen cinema, the first multiplex that opened in within our reachable distance. So we'd drive up, gang of us, and we'd go and watch the latest film on a big screen with butter popcorn. Never had butter on popcorn.
You see, I've been there once. I've been there once. We lived in Woburn Sands. We worked in a pub in Woburn. Yeah. And after hours, we were hungry and we stopped at a garage there because it was all we could find, and had a pie shoved under the flat to us that had been heated. And that's my experience of Milton Keynes.
Yeah, well, you see, you missed that. Well, you see, you were a walkie back then. You see, but The Point was the first club I'd ever been to that had a lift. So you got in. I mean, it's all accessible. It was the most accessible place in the world.
Yeah, but I thought the clubs you went to had hoists.
No, that was later on in my life. This is still where I was dancing around the room, dancing around white handbags to kind of Rick Astley. So
I thought you'd have a white handbag. I knew you would have a white handbag.
I didn't, but I knew people that did. So is it still a really accessible place, Milton Keynes, Kerry?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it could improve. There could be improvements. And I'm working with the council to make those improvements. Drop curbs are a huge thing in Milton Keynes. But yeah, other than that, the Point is still there. It doesn't actually open anymore. And I don't think the lights actually switch on, but it is still there.
Do you know what? Because I heard it was going up for sale, and part of me thought, if only I could buy it, because
Milton Keynes?
No, the Point. It's a pyramid-shaped nightclub. Right, yeah. And it's basically got a restaurant in the bottom and then a club in the top, and it used to have all lights shining, and you could see it for miles. You come off the motorway at Junction 14, and in the distance there was this bright red pyramid, Gary Newman style, with lights coming out the top, searchlights, and it was fantastic because all the trees that had been planted in Milton Keynes back then were so short you could see all the way to the centre. Now you go to Milton Keynes, and the trees are all trees, like proper grown-up trees, and then you realise just how old you are. But to live in it, it would be the ultimate sort of futuristic pad.
I mean, you had, I think before it closed, you had obviously the cinema. Yep. Then you had loads of little arcade bits. There was a couple of bars in there. Yep. There was a couple of restaurants. So, it was, I hadn't been in there for years, I must be honest, before it closed. But yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame that it's quite an iconic Milton Keynes venue.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And like I said, what was great about it was, I'd come from Luton, I'd clubbed in London. Clubs weren't really accessible, and venues, gigs and that, it was quite hard. And then the Point opened, and suddenly you could go and see your favourite bands. I went to see Tick and Tock. I went to see Captain Sensible, Mel and Kim.
Tick and Tock, are they like Mik and Zec?
They were robots. They were the robots.
The point.
Yes,
get to
the point. I'm getting to the point.
The point.
And the reason why I was really impressed with Milton Keynes, and that was also because when I met people in the Point, we went back to their houses, and each row of houses or area at the end of each road had an accessible flat or property, and it was part of the plan was to build accessible homes. So I always thought that would be the future, and yet here we are in the future. And it's not quite the case.
No, it's not. They're building so much around here, so much that all the old villages are grown into one. and they're not accessible. They're not affordable.
It's like when the accessible homes hit the news, and you kind of, for us, you look at it and go, accessible crisis, accessible homes crisis. Oh, right, so you've just worked that out? Because I'm pretty sure we've known that for quite a while now.
They're sorting it. They are on it. The government are on it. So many of us are going to die this winter that it will cut down the need for accessible housing.
Oh, here comes
for balance. I'd like to say that Labour.
Just say Labour. for balance Labour. And some other parties. Like a Christmas party. It's Christmas party season soon. So that would be great. What was your sort of path to get in an accessible home? How difficult did you find it, Kerry?
Well, I worked for a very cheap alcohol beverage company back in when I was 20. And then I was diagnosed at 24 with muscular dystrophy. So my working career became very hard. So my work career came with a home, which wasn't massively accessible because I was already struggling to use the stairs. So Milton Keynes Council gave me a 1-bed flat on the ground floor, but it had a very big slope, which became an even bigger problem. The kitchen, you could swing a cat in. I fell in the kitchen so many times that in the end, it came to the point of me saying, I can't use my wheelchair in it. I can't get out to not use my wheelchair. I was depressed. I was pretty much just living to exist in my home. That was it. It took me 4 years to battle with the council to get a home that was accessible. And I was faced with, well, you're not 65 and over. You don't need a bungalow.
No.
I'm sorry, what?
Yes.
What? I'm in a wheelchair. I do need a bungalow. That would be a lot easier. But if you want to give me a house with a lift, well, why would we do that? And it came an ultimate battle of they would send OT round, and OT would be like, well, we can do this and we can do that, but it's not really going to make much difference. And then it wasn't until that phone call came 4 years down the line of me spending pretty much 4 years every single week phoning them up and saying, hi, me again.
Anything on the list?
Am I any further on the list? Are we anywhere at all? To be, no, sorry, nothing's come up. So then all of a sudden I got a phone call, Kerry, guess what? I'm like, oh, go on, please. She's like, we've found you somewhere. You need to go view it. So we turned up at this bungalow that I'm in now. And my husband's like, baby, it's slightly smaller than what we're in now. And it did look very small from the outside of our home. Then we came in, I was like, oh, wow, it's like a TARDIS. And it was great. You know, I could get in the door. There was no steps. There was no ramp. I could get in a bedroom. I could get in the kitchen. I could swing more than 3 cats in the kitchen, which was great. And it was, I could see it being a home. And I had a back garden that I could go and enjoy. Yeah, I know. And that was, and it was kind of like, okay, we can move in. You know, when can we move in? And it sounds really cliche when I say it, but having an accessible home has changed my life.
Yeah.
I'm not on antidepressants anymore.
Nope.
I'm interacting with human beings instead of just speaking to them online. I'm now, you know, I'm a blogger. I'm an activist. I work for different companies here, there, and everywhere. I work for Muscular Dystrophy UK on the Changing Places part. So I don't see, if I'd have stayed in that 1-bedroom pokey flat, just being able to sit in a chair and watch TV, I wouldn't be doing what I wouldn't be here with you guys now.
No. This is the key, I think, about what society doesn't get and what planners don't get and what architects don't get and what councils don't get is, while housing is important for everyone, for disabled people, especially those who have actual a need for an accessible home, it's the difference between having a life and not. And the number of people you see that say, we've got Mark has just said, I'm a prisoner in my own home as I live in the middle of nowhere up a hill. Exactly. There's more to, I mean, whatever a building's like, there's more to it. And this is one of the reasons why I can't stay where I am, because my flat is meant to be accessible, even though the doors aren't wide enough and there's a lip to get in and the bathroom's not right and the list is endless. Because once you get an accessible home, you realize what they should be like. And so then when you move into another one, you're like, no, this is wrong. You've worked this out wrong. But as well as the actual measurements, it's where they are.
Yeah.
Where you put them. And so is it near amenities? Is it easy to get to places? Have you got parking for cars?
But it's things that people who are not wheelchair users or are not disabled may not realise. Our last bungalow, it was poor access. Getting in and out was a nightmare. But even if it was, the path was like that towards the road, so much that I was on one arm going the whole way. It was hell getting up and down the road. And so it's the area as well.
Yeah. So, because like Kerry has explained, has demonstrated, I think, very well that the process, you have to be kind of a thorn in their side. That's all you ever have to be. And it's kind of that thing. You have to keep nagging and nagging and nagging. Yeah. And because Zec, you're at the start of this, aren't you? Because you're in rented accommodation and you've applied for a council flat.
I've just started because the old mate has
nagged me to do it.
With our last property, when it was sold, like the landlord's like, I'm selling. We had real problems finding a property. One, because of deposits. Two, because people were turning up and almost outbidding each other.
Yeah.
We had a dog. I'm a wheelchair user. And yes, I know we are very destructive to door frames, etc. And it was all
not
going
if they're a metre
us.
wide, John.
No.
If they're the right width, it's great. You miss it by miles.
Yeah. Donna was going out, looking to come back, said, I think I found somewhere. Me and the landlord didn't stop, so I think I'm in there. And he phoned up and he said, it's 900. We want you to have it, but we need you to pay more. And I said, no. And he really wanted us because he kept it at 900. And it's been 900 ever since, 9 years. But there is a step like that to get in the front door.
Yeah.
And there's not enough room to put in a ramp.
No.
The bottom of the front door, I could literally push my finger through the wood. It's that rotten. There's gaps under the front back door. The bathroom already is icy. There's mould. It's, I've got a shower board. I've got bars, but I've had, as I said to you before we went live, I had to sign a form to say, if we move, I will pay to have the tiling replaced in the bathroom because there are 8 screw holes through these tiles. Not the fact that, oh, look, you could now rent to someone. And we're on the verge. He keeps threatening. He keeps wobbling. He came up, I'm going to move my mum and my sister in there. You can have their bungalow. It's cheaper for you as well. It wasn't. But his sister said, you'll never get in a wheelchair. And then he quietened down. But I know he doesn't want anything to do. I know if we poke him, it's going to go wrong.
Yeah, the law is really dodgy on landlords. You'd think there'd be some kind of, Equality Act bit, but it's really tough to, they can't deny you the right to do accessible features, unless, of course, there is something like a listed status. Hurrah. But
this isn't listed on Homes Most Mouldy.
Yeah, but what is it?
And the mold's our fault.
Nightmare tenants and some of the other landlords on Channel 5.
That we've got mould because when you've got wardrobes there, it's going to get mouldy behind there, and you've got too much furniture. I'm sorry.
You've got
too much furniture. How dare you? Stuff. How dare you have clothes to put on your back?
Yeah, but it's so. Because I found, my journey was, I was living at home with my parents in an accessible bungalow that we'd adapted. My parents bought the bungalow long before I became a wheelchair user, on the off chance that I might become a wheelchair user. Now, if that's not jinxing it, I don't know what is. But anyway, it meant
we'll get in that wheelchair.
Yeah, we've got this bloody bungalow now. We've sold our lovely house. Get in that chair. But so when I became a wheelchair user, the OT came round, did a bit of magic, bang, bang, toilet door that was sliding door in the bedroom, ramp outside the house, done, sorted, accessible. And I was 15. I didn't leave home till I was 27. And I wanted to leave home years before. Me and an ex-girlfriend wanted to buy somewhere, and we discovered that banks wouldn't lend money to me because I had cancer as a baby and therefore wouldn't be able to get life insurance, and you couldn't get a mortgage without life insurance back then. So then my girlfriend decided that she would buy the house and I would pay half of it, but it would still be all hers. And that was when that relationship went right up the Swanee. So then I was trying to get a council house, and I'd applied with this girl years before and nothing. And I went in and I kept going in, as Kerry said, in. Next week, down. I drove down, went in, sat in the foyer. Any housing? I just wanted to remind you, any news? Over and over. And until they're like, oh, God, it's him again. Quick, lock the door. And it transpired they'd lost my claim. And this is back when they were paper, and it'd fallen down the filing cabinet, and it was at the bottom of the filing cabinet.
Yeah, sure, they went, there's Mik.
So they found it. And suddenly went, oh my God, you've been waiting 8 years. I'm so sorry. And within about a month, I was offered a family bungalow. There was only me. So I had this huge bungalow. It was like, yeah, luxury, man. But I wanted to live in London. I didn't like it. I wanted to go down. I wanted to be in London in the thick of it all. So I did a swappy thing through a mate who lived with Habinteg. And I got a one-bed flat in Hackney with Habinteg. And that was when the fun began, because that was when it was, yes, there it is, Habinteg. Today's been sponsored by Habinteg, not giving us any money, but they're lovely. So
we're just basically saying that they do accessible housing.
There's two of us out of the three people on this who are going, give us a house, and one of the people that's got one. So that's why we're doing it, Habinteg. Subtle hint. Anyway.
Well, no use for. I did look on the Habinteg map, and there's nowhere around in this little corner. Nowhere.
They got all the current housing is all up north, so it's no good for us.
Well, no, I think Chelmsford, London, but down in Southend. No.
London? You found stuff in London? I couldn't find any in London. I found it in Hull. That was good.
I thought there was one in London anyway.
Yeah, there's some in London. Yeah.
Well, I'm I've got my letter in, and I'm at a certain point. I've been approved as amber or whatever. So I'm not super urgent.
That's the colour of your hair. They've just only remembering amber.
But more, yes, it's just more urgent than not urgent, but less urgent than urgent, if you see what I mean. So, but they were great. And what was really weird was I went and moved into an assisted living place. So basically, we all had emergency cords to pull, and then someone would come and save you if you're falling out of your chair, which I didn't need. But unfortunately, because all my friends were party animals, they'd all come back and pull the cord at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking it was the light switch. So the poor woman that provided nighttime assistance was like, what? You all right, Mik? And they'd be like, sorry, it's my drunk mates again. And it was like, I never once used it in 4 years. So I don't
think I'd like it, because I'm Donna's granddad being in there. And you go round, take shopping round, and all of a sudden the voice go, good morning, Mr. Black, and scare the life out of you. No one knocking on your door.
But this is the other thing, because Suzanne Ball that does Attitude is Everything. She had to go and live in an old people's home when she came down to London. That was her first chance to become independent, was to live in an old people's home. She was only about 18, 19.
Wow.
And she was stuck there for years. And this is the problem. There needs to be more housing built. We can't even talk about the fact that we can't visit our friends.
There's plenty of housing being built.
It's just not accessible.
No.
They're still building step access. I contacted a company in the middle of, I think it was last year, and I asked them, I said, I see that you've got plans and you're building, 200 new homes. How many of those are step free? And the woman came back to me and she was like, oh, I don't actually know.
They correct that with a bit of block paving on the driveway that comes up. It's Southend Council at the moment are turning the whole of Victoria Avenue. As you came in, it used to be banks, all these big buildings, DHSS, all that, and they're now turning it into housing. They've converted it all, and I think they're going to do the same with the high street. Perfect. No, there's a coffee shop underneath, and they've got a little balcony. They're all fortunes.
Well, they're fortunes to you. To Londoners, they're probably peanut cheap, because we go around the country going 250 what for a 2-bed what? We can't buy.
Where are you looking?
We can't buy a car parking space for that.
No, it's all gone way up here because of them.
Yeah, that's it. So us Londoners, we're like cancer.
50 minutes on the train,
ruining it. That's it.
Well,
so now you got a fast train.
Do you know that the old Southend Essex, like Southend accent, isn't like that. This is an East End accent, but the EastEnders, the original EastEnders, were pushed out, and the Southenders were pushed up. We were more.
What you got to remember is it wasn't pushed out. I know this because this. Don't forget, I'm married to a Londoner, and my wife's entire family, older family, once they got a bit of money, moved out of London and went to Southend, where it was dead posh, and they all moved to Southend because that's where they went when you made a bit of money, you know. Yeah. So we used to see Southend. Londoners saw Southend as a success. East End Londoners, Southend sorted. So, but now you've got the terrible creep. Milton Keynes must be having it as well.
The terrible creep.
Up there,
James Duttridge, our MP.
buying up everything and making it so you can't afford to live there because the Londoners are
creep.
Yeah, it is becoming really. Yeah, it's becoming quite expensive. I was contacted by there's a new. I would say it's not a block of flats, but they're rentable apartments. And I had a look, and one of them is accessible. I'm waiting to go and view it because she wants some input. And I had a look at the price tag, and it's like over £1,000. And I was like,
"You're looking for £1,000 here for a flat in Southend now?
It's
£1,000 a month mortgage. Is that what you mean?
If we got lost this, I mean, we would be paying hundreds of pounds more, which the council don't pay. It comes out of my PIP. Yeah. We're really struggling because we're topping up the rent because they did away with paying your rent and they now just do the LHA, is it called, local housing doodah. So no, this is the issue. You can't.
Well, all I want to say to you all is I already pay more than that for my housing association flat in London. We pay £52 a week in service charge, for God's sake. It's like. Well, we get £52 a week service charge and don't get any service because everyone in the private block calls us the council house scum. So it's lovely. It's a lovely place to live. They've got a gym and a garden. We don't. They've got parking spaces for their Ferraris. We don't. So anyway, let's not get hung up on the joys of London. Let's think that now. Let's have a look. I've been given a list of things to raise by Habinteg. I'll go on to the next one in a minute, but there's one here. It's a bit technical, but basically what's happening is hopefully there's consultation from the government on changing the rules on how homes are built and designed. Yeah. Because at the moment they have to conform to what's called M41, which basically means you can visit the house. And that means that there is meant to be level access. There was meant to be level access from 1998, and I know this because I presented the BBC News item.
I'm sorry, at the moment, the standards are that it has to be to a standard where we can visit.
Yes.
Which is,
How many houses do you know where we can visit?
There's meant to be either an entrance.
You've got 7% chance. Yeah. There's a 7% chance of any of us in a wheelchair or with any impairment that can go and visit. So it's... I can't get into my nan's. No, there's nothing to say, is there really? I can't visit my nan's. I can go and sit outside in the back garden.
Yes.
And I can sit out the front and have a conversation with her. But going into our house and being able to access our house, I can't do.
Yeah, I say my mum's house is lovely. Mother brought a lovely bungalow and they had all the work done, the single story with all the glass and the sliding doors, and she actually said to me, how big do you need the door open, where would the toilet be? She consulted. There's no bar. I struggle to get on and off the toilet, but I can get in there, and so it teases me when I go around.
Well,
it's all smooth.
If all else fails,
no
It's so funny because my mum, when she died, she left me and Steve the bungalow, sort of going, well, that way you can live there if you want. And it's like, no, I don't want it, not in that place. So anyway, it's funny because Mark has said, my mum's house is like that. I can get in and there is a toilet on the ground floor. The problem is all the ground floor toilets are more like next to the front door, and they're tiny little things. They're kind of more like just ground floor loos for anyone.
My daughter's house is like that. Leave the wheelchair outside, take one step and plop on the toilet.
That's not. This is the point. This is why this announcement they're going to go from this M41 to what is M42, accessible and adaptable dwellings within the building regs, is great. But seeing no one sticks to M41 in the first place, I mean, do you think it's a good idea, Kerry? Do you think that if we start raising the bar, that developers will actually have to build up to it, or will they, as they always do, find an excuse for not doing it?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good start, and that's what we needed. We needed that footing start to be able to then educate a bit more. In the fact is that they say they've listened. I hope they have. I hope they've listened to all of us, and I hope they do take note of what is actually needed. But what's needed is for them to actually make sure that the construction, the building work that goes on is following the guidelines. Because if it isn't, and there is then another loophole for them to be able to say, well, we thought about it, we've kind of looked at it, we've implemented a few things, but we decided to go down a different route because it was more efficient.
Yeah, and more cost effective. It's very expensive.
Yeah, very. Yes.
Is there a market? Is there a market for people that need these homes? I don't think there are.
See, I mean, I have no proof, but I think what happens is they say, right, builders, if you build X amount of homes, so many have to be social housing, so many of them have to be affordable and accessible. So they build them in batches rather than one big lot. Right, we've done that and we build. And yet, do you watch Grand Designs? Who watches good old Grand Designs?
Oh, I love I've watched it from day one.
Yeah,
dreaming every issue of going one day.
You know, those houses that were built in a factory in a block and they craned them in sections. So cheap, so much cheaper. They could be so accessible.
Yeah.
And it's easy. And
they could also build accessible features like units. You know, have you seen that woman in Germany that builds ramps out of Lego?
Yes.
And she basically builds a glues together and gives them to shops. Now, of course, I imagine they're a little bit, but they're better than nothing. And I think that this is the thing, is that there's ways of doing it so that you can retrofit. But I see I've worked in this arena professionally for over 10 years. And I've been in planning meetings where you see that your council doesn't know what they're talking about. That the planning department have okayed designs that don't comply with the building regs. And then once they've been built and stuff's been taken out, it's quite expensive. Then what happens is they get passed by building control, because that's now a private thing that councils hire in. And so they actually want to pass things because they're going to get paid more if they do than if they don't. So what you end up with is at all levels, the system fails. And I think this is why it needs to be much stricter. If, like Milton Keynes used to be, like Milton Keynes Council said, right, you build 10 homes in a row, one at either end must be accessible. So if you build a great big street, you know that every time there's a break in the road, the one at the start and the one at the end will be inaccessible in some way. Yeah. So there was one of my friends lived in a bungalow that was built on the corner of two sort of terraced blocks, and then there was this little bungalow that was built in a triangle in the gap, and it was really brilliant, clever idea.
Like my old home, my old home was at the very end, in the corner,
and it was because this is in the 80s, and this is what bugs me, because I moved to London to Habinteg house that was built in the 80s, and that had a fire escape on the first floor, so I could live on the first floor and get out in case of fire because they'd built a ramp outside, so you went down the ramp, hadn't got away from the burning building. Then I went to a 2-bed in West London, and that also had fire escape built in to first floor houses, flats and houses. They were townhouses up there, but you could still escape. So everybody on the first floor of the huge development I lived in could get out during this ramp. I now live in a block of flats that were built in 2008 with no fire escape for me on the first floor. No peep, no plan to get out, no way of getting out other than sitting in my flat, waiting to be saved by the fireman. That Zec used to be a fireman, so you know he knows his onions about lifting me out. And then we found out we've got Bernie cladding, so now everyone's been told to get out, apart from me, who's just been don't mention Mik. If we don't mention him, he won't know. It's all right. Yeah, you'll be all right, mate. Don't worry. You just wait, and we'll be fine. So. This is the thing. We really need stricter rules on what is built. And we also need to make the developers understand that there is a market. whether it be councils buying these homes to become council houses, whether it be housing associations selling them, either renting them or part buying them or selling them, as a lot of them do now. But because I looked at buying a few years back, and we found that all the houses that were accessible had two problems. One, they weren't very accessible. And two, they had a ruling that you couldn't adapt or change anything in the house for 5 years, because that's how long the warranty lasted on all the stuff. So you went in the kitchen and went... Yeah,
we talked about this before, and we said, a lot of these very quick build modern houses, you couldn't put a stair lift in because the walls would not take a bloody stair lift because they are so badly built. They're not bricks anymore, these places.
No, God, no. Bricks?
They're bloody awful.
Well, I know this to be true because this is where I live, in a cardboard house that's basically bits of cardboard with plaster on, some wooden struts in between me and the neighbour. And recently, a little while ago, I had to take something out of one of the side of the panels of the kitchen, and found that there's no actual wall behind it. So that's why we've got mice now, because between me and my neighbour, there is no actual wall. I can actually poke and wave to him through his single skin of cardboard. They are very badly built.
And yet back to those wooden houses, those modules that they bring together, clamp together, they're all built. The kitchens, everything goes in the factory. They're there. They're perfect. Just crane them into site. It costs a fraction. It's more environmentally friendly. And yet, oh no, we can't do that, can we? Not as long as these companies are making all this money and these builders are earning 500 quid a day lifting bricks.
The other thing, of course, they then do is they then go, oh, well, no one wanted to buy the accessible house. So we can now sell it on the open market, but we can charge more for it because it's got more per square foot. Because, of course, there is a ruling on the fact that each area of the house has got to have a 1.20 meter turning circle for each function. So in my living room, I've got 1.20 meter for the
Can you turn around in the hallway?
Oh, my hallway is as big as most people's living room. It's huge. It's
I have to go all the way up, find a doorway, and turn around and come back again. Well,
and
you can tell by the...
And again, that's the thing about Habinteg. They design all that, don't they? All of my flats have had great big halls. We used to use the hall in my flat in West London as a dressing room. So we'd have all music on and loads of mirrors and lights and everything. It was great. So, and this is the point, is that Habinteg proves it can be done.
So who are Habinteg? Yeah. Who are Habinteg? And
habitation,
how would someone go?
Habitation and integration. That's what they used to be, and that's where the name comes from. Because what it is they build development.
Stop talking. I'm talking to Kerry from Habinteg.
Are you? No, we've got to say Kerry. This is why I always say Kerry at the end of my questions, because then that way she knows to answer.
Kerry, tell me about Habinteg.
Tell us about Habinteg.
Habinteg, they are specialists in building accessible homes.
Oh, so they are
build. I live on my street. I live on a street that's integrated with houses as well as bungalows, and it's great. It's there's probably about 11, 12 bungalows on this street that are purposely built for a disabled tenant, and all the switches are halfway up. All the plug sockets are halfway up. I have plug sockets among plug sockets.
They're halfway up the wall?
They're halfway up the wall, yeah. So all the light switches, halfway up the wall. All the plug sockets, halfway up the wall. My front door, I can literally come out of my living room. It's in a straight line to my front door, and I can go straight out. I can turn around in my carport. I can come back in again.
I don't like you. But why? This is a bit like getting someone on that's it's like watching Bake Off for me. I'm just sitting there like, it's not fair.
As I say, it's a cliche when I say this home has changed my life, but it has, and it's incredible that I speak to all of my neighbours that are around as well, and they've all got cars and they've got lives, and I'm just like, I've been here 10 years, and it took me 10 years to really kind of sit here and go, this is my life. And
a home for life is
yeah, absolutely. And it's sad that when we were in the middle of a pandemic, I was receiving messages from people saying that they were stuck in one room. They lived in a beautiful home, but they couldn't get up the stairs. They couldn't use the kitchen. So their living room was acting as their bathroom, their bedroom, their kitchen, their everything.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it shouldn't be happening that way. And then I'm getting messages from people saying, I'm 45 and I live in a nursing home because they can't house me anywhere. And it's just like, I am lucky, but why should I be the lucky one? Living an accessible home isn't a flaming privilege.
No. And I don't have much hope that it's going to improve, because the way things are going at the moment, the way it's going, it's just, I don't want to get political again. Don't get political, Labour. Do you know what I mean? It's just going down. It's going down the shitter, isn't it?
It's education, isn't it?
We're going to be heating our home to 17 degrees this year just to survive. And therefore, I could have had a wet room put in. OT said,
it's me. I'm coming back. You can't get rid of me, because that brings me on to another point that
Ready?
the wonderful habit. Don't you mute me. I love you. I know where you live, right? And I probably wouldn't be able to get in the door to get you.
You won't get in.
But of course, Habinteg next week is Habinteg's Accessible Homes Week.
Yes.
And that, like, the question is, ask Kerry, why is that Habinteg Accessible Homes Week important? So why do you think it's important?
It's important because I think everyone we shouldn't have to educate people on why homes are important. But I think everyone that lives in a home and everyone that's just been through the same thing we've all been through for the past 3 years should realise that when we were locked up and grounded for 2 years, that having a home that's adapted to your needs is so important to be able to cope for. And yes, I know that we are adaptable in that sometimes I go into hibernation in winter. I very rarely go out just because my body just does not like the cold weather. So we all adapt, and we know we all adapt. And I just think it's very easy for somebody that hasn't got anyone around them to understand why it's so important for Accessible Homes Week. But we are living in a crisis of that we haven't got enough accessible homes. And when you've got councils that are adapting homes to be accessible, but then that accessible homes becoming available, they're ripping 20 grand's worth of equipment out to give it to somebody else that isn't a wheelchair user or isn't partially blind and doesn't need that home. And that's where we need to draw the line and say, hold on a minute, you need to stop. Because there are people
councils,
out there.
They do rip the hell out of every house and return it back to bog standard 1940s.
Yeah. They either tell you that you're not 65 and over, so you don't deserve a bungalow, or they're ripping all the accessibleness out of a home that could go to somebody, that can make somebody, a perfectly decent home and to be able to live an independent life. And, it has been proven that if we're given a home, or we have a home, should I say, that is accessible to our needs, we are less likely to go in and out of hospital. We're less likely to drain the health service because we need antidepressants. We need X, Y, and Z to be able to live. And it's having that voice and saying, I am disabled. I do have a right to live. I have a right to live an independent life, and I want an accessible home. And it's educating the government. It's educating architects. It's educating builders. It's educating the huge companies that are going out and buying land and saying, we're going to build 250 houses on here, but they're all going to be step access. It's educating them and saying, hold on a minute, but if I have a family member, or God forbid you buy one of those houses and then all of a sudden you become disabled and you then can't use that home, you're going to then realize pretty quickly that, maybe I shouldn't have built a step access, and maybe I shouldn't have bought an 80 meter, a wide enough door, or the stairs in this place or a corridor that should be this wide. It is unfortunately down to education, and it's down to sharing and that's why I think, hit social media next week between Tuesday and Friday. Use the hashtag Accessible Homes Week. And if you have a bad experience, a good experience, any experience when it comes to accessible homes, use that hashtag, share with the world, because it's only going to change if we bombard, social media and the government and everywhere else and say, we are human beings as well.
Unfortunately, I've spoken to Mik about this before. We all have these disability campaigns. We all have these hashtags. I think it only gets heard by the disability community. I really do. I just feel like sometimes
I would agree with that in most cases, but I think the thing is here is that Habinteg and the Centre for Accessible Environments are on the at the table. Do you know what I mean? It's not like most of us shout around outside going boo and William Rees-Mogg and whatever just go don't care. But Habinteg are actually there at the table. They're advising the government, and I think that's why it matters. Because if we give them ammunition, then that means they can go into the meeting fully armed, shall we say. So if you've got those stories, they can print them up and go, look, we've had thousands of responses, positive ones saying how good an accessible home, how it's changed their life, like Kerry's story, like mine.
Will it change? Because
stories like Zec,
that's how we've managed to get the consultation
we've got a government
changed.
that will do what it takes to keep the people that are making the money happy. We know that. We know that they're doing this with energy and that. They're keeping these people happy. They're not doing what needs to be done. They're doing what has to be done to keep their people okay.
The thing is, though, Zec, is that disability rights has been, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I've
55. I'm going to die soon.
I'm 57, mate. I'm going to be dying even sooner. And I'm afraid to say that for us oldies, we ain't going to see the golden promised land. We're not, right? But the thing is, if we can get it so that they even start thinking, say developers just start thinking, I won't build it to be visitable, I'll build it to be accessible. They realise they have to do that. They'll get it wrong. They always do. That's why people like me and Kerry have such a fun and varied career going around going wrong, right? But it means it'll start. And like we said, there are examples now of really good practice. I mean, talking about doors, all my doors in my Habinteg flats are 1 metre wide. I mean, 1 metre wide is just like, whoa, you can almost wheel sideways.
Developers, they're cramming houses into the smallest of spaces. All these little gaps will cost them houses. It will cost them, at the prices they're going, millions of pounds because they can't, it all adds up.
But that's why it's got to come from government.
There's a development.
From local councils,
there's a development just up the road from me. And there was the tiniest bit of land that they did say they were going to build a couple of a cafe and some takeaway places, but they've now decided to build 8 houses that are 3-story. They're literally on the corner of a very busy road next to Asda. With 2 of these homes have got a dirty grey Asda sign outside the front, and it's like, why would you? I wouldn't. And they're all step access.
I grew up on
and
an
you
estate.
can see there's step access.
I grew up on an estate, and when we moved in, there was lots of fields out Great Wakering, and then they started building. And even as a kid, I realised they'd put the footings down before they build, and you walk in and go, this is nice. You stand on the footings of these houses, and you're like, how is this possible that this is going to be a family home? At 10 years old, I knew that. Look at the size of this.
Try living in London. I mean, they'll build a block of flats on a postage stamp. A mate of mine in South London used to go and paint a tank. Right, believe it or not, there was a tank parked on this tiny little piece of land that was basically the size of a tank, and he'd done it. The guy had parked a tank on there because he'd applied to build flats on it and been refused.
That,
So then he's got his planning permission. Tank's gone, and now, I mean, honest to God, it's what most people would call a wide driveway. There's going to be a block of flats. They build them anyway. It's like, we've got a tiny bit of green space out the back, and I'm pretty sure soon they'll build another tower block there. So and none of them will be accessible.
Here, this is 50 foot wide by 100, the plot 150, and I know they'd put the houses in sideways and they'd have 5. So that's what the landlord's after.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this is, I mean, one of the other things about bungalows is all the private bungalows are now being bought up and turned into houses, aren't they? Because it's worth more. So they're going. Yeah. We're coming to the end. It's really going to be about. God, you're cheerful tonight, Zec.
Miserable
but it's got to be about getting legislation passed that.
Yes.
I think the three things, and this is what I think. One, about planning regs that need to be enforced. Two, about promoting the idea that actually disabled people have lives and would be able to pay rent and buy places and stuff. But three, I also think there needs to be a dedicated housing register for disabled people. So if you become or are disabled, you go on the list and they show you these adapted homes, and they aren't shown to anyone else. They're taken out of the housing list and put on that housing register. Because then, Kerry, if you move, you want someone else who's disabled living there. If I move, I want someone disabled living here.
Even though it could burn to death, you miserable old bugger, Mik. You just told us you could burn to death, and you wanted to.
Well, they could be a runner, they could be a walker, they could be a hobbler. It's only us not able to get downstairs.
I know that was really shit of me, wasn't it?
I know it's because you're feeling a bit
making
down.
Me look stupid.
That's okay. You've muted me once.
I'm bereft from the death. Excuse me.
Oh, don't. We're not talking. We purposely haven't.
No, we are. Right, I'm going to mute Mik because I know. Right, hang on. Where is it? Because I know it's not a royalist. Ladies and gentlemen, this week we mourn the death of our sovereign Queen Lady Elizabeth, who served us for many years. Don't look at him, right? And it is sad. I don't care whether you like the royals or you don't. People are like, I'm giving this money. Look, it's lovely. People like us. So we've got a royal family. Wave your flag. Keep quiet 8 o'clock tonight. Yeah, it's only 2 minutes. Even Mik, no. Keep quiet tonight for 2 minutes. Tomorrow, you got a day off. Sit down, watch funeral. It's a once in a lifetime thing. It's a once in a lifetime thing. I remember my mum saying about the coronation. We're going to get sit at the funeral and coronation. It's going to be amazing. It's historical. Now, here's Mik's view.
No, I was going to say I agree. I was also going to say, of course, my mum died only 3 years ago. And I think whatever your feelings are on the institution, you can understand what it's like to suddenly lose someone you love. It happened very similar. I went to see her on Sunday. She was fine, well, ill, but fine. And then on Monday, she was gone. So, that.
How have they kept going? How has he done all of that when he just wants to cry? I think the only thing that you can moan about, and I moan about, and people going, but they weren't working, was like Philip Schofield, the queue jumping pillock.
Oh, I mean, when you've got David Beckham that queued for as long as he did, and then you've got Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield. But did you see? I did see someone had retweeted that ITV had come out and said they were there on an official capacity.
Yes, and they were spinning the wheel to earn your energy prices.
They were journalists that day.
Were they? Yeah, he looked happy like he was working. Have you seen his face?
Yeah.
It was good that they had an accessible method of going in. I thought that was
very good.
I personally did advise upon it through my work with Buckinghamshire Disability Services. So it was good.
Palace Disability.
Yes, but do you know what? I actually worked and have advised the Palace, both Buckingham and Windsor, through another friend of mine called Nick Goss and his company.
Did you do the bear skins? Did you show me how to cope?
No, I had to go up to Windsor Castle looking like this to go into Windsor Castle, and a guy, full arm and big machine gun, had to come up, and I had to go, hello, I'm working here, honestly. Never been so afraid in my life. Those guns look really big when they're real, and here, and you're like, okay, sorry, I look like a punk. I don't know why my voice got this high. I'm ever so sorry.
I don't know. Did you do that?
That was the last time I got stopped by the police. My voice was that high. Sorry, officer. Oh, I was just going out with my mates. Yes, I'll empty my pockets. Anyway, so, I hope that everyone, I think also it reminds us all of our loss this period. So whatever your feelings are, I hope you're all okay. I hope you're getting through it all right. And, we'll see you next time when we'll, do something else, and I'll probably get muted more. This is Zec's new tool to actually get a word in edgeways. He's got the mute button. I don't. We'd love to thank you so much for coming on, Kerry. To be honest, 50 million years. And I'm just going to keep talking. I don't care because this is funnier than actually saying anything. I don't know what's going on now. Anyway, Kerry, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Kerry.
It's been fantastic. You must come on again.
Yeah, definitely.
Talk about campaigning. And of course, don't forget, we are also looking for co-presenters because both Zec and I fall to pieces on occasion. So if you want to throw your hat in the ring to be one of our co-presenters when we're feeling a bit peaky, that would be fantastic.
I must admit, we have had a few offers, and it has been my lack of... I haven't been honest. Sorry, I'm really terrible. During the week, I just go... and I just forget everything.
Yes, we're all a bit.
Yeah, no, let's have a chat, definitely.
Yeah, cool. That sounds brilliant.
It's been brilliant. Thank you so much, guys, for having me
coming on. So don't forget, folks, look up for Habinteg on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Put the address up again, Zec, habinteg.org.uk. There we go. So go to the website. There'll be stuff about it. And as Kerry said, post your stories. Videos are really good as well. I know Sharon said do little videos. So if you're in a great accessible house, wheel around, show it. Show us what you've got. If your house isn't,
really
show us what's bad. There you go, Zec. So go around and do a review of your house.
Yeah.
I'm too ashamed. I'm literally too ashamed. There's a reason I've got a green screen behind me. It's like the only way I can get a decent wall up.
Yeah, dear. But do all that. Get it done. When we'll join the voices, get all our voices together, shout as loud as we can, and hopefully we will get there. Because one thing, of course, I always think that people forget is that disability can strike anybody. So, this is why building these adaptable homes is good. Because you might not need it today, but you might need it tomorrow. And I have no idea where that's coming from. But
that's somebody's doorbell. Is that your doorbell?
That's my doorbell.
That's your doorbell. And with that, we will go so Kerry can go and answer the door.
Ring doorbell.
So see you all next time. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.